It's one of the biggest decisions a Catholic family can make, not just where to live, but where to grow. Where to raise children, not just with good grades and safe streets, but with hearts rooted in truth. Where the local parish isn't just a building you pass on Sundays, but a living part of your family's story. Where the faith isn't something you have to defend at every turn, but something that quietly surrounds you through friendships, schools, even neighborhood traditions. For many parents, the question is simple. Where can we live so that our children have the best chance of staying close to Christ? But the answer is never one size fits all. Some families dream of mountain towns where they can hike after Mass. Others long for warm places with vibrant parishes and perpetual adoration chapels. For some, it's about being near a faithful diocese or finding a pocket of orthodoxy in an otherwise secular landscape. And as it turns out, when Catholic parents ask each other where to go, one place they often turn is Reddit. In threads filled with honesty, hope, and hard-won wisdom, families have begun sharing their stories, what's worked, what hasn't, and where the faith feels most alive. This story isn't about perfect cities. It's about places where faith can take root, where the church feels like home, where Catholic life doesn't have to be an uphill battle. These cities aren't just popular, they're prayerful. Chosen not because they made a magazine list, but because real families are living there, loving there, and building something eternal. And in an age where culture moves fast and values shift even faster, these families are choosing something slower, something deeper. They are choosing to stay planted not just in soil, but in Scripture. Not just in homes, but in hope. And for anyone searching for where to begin again, this might be exactly what you've been praying for. It's easy to think of a city as Catholic-friendly just because it has a cathedral or a Catholic school tucked into one of its neighborhoods. But for families searching for something more, a place where the faith isn't just present, but alive, there are deeper signs they look for. The conversations on Reddit reveal a quiet consensus. The best cities to raise a Catholic family aren't the ones with the flashiest parishes, but the ones where Catholic life can breathe. Where it can be lived daily, not just celebrated seasonally. It starts with access. A city where daily Mass is available within a short drive. Where confession isn't a monthly event, but a weekly grace. Where you don't have to explain what holy days of obligation are to your neighbors, because many of them are heading to church too. Then there's parish life, something you can't fake and you can't force. Reddit threads often glow with stories about welcoming priests, family-friendly liturgies, and communities that feel like extended family. Parents talk about how coffee and donuts after Mass turned into lifelong friendships. How Bible studies became lifelines. How their children feel known and loved at church, not just tolerated. Schools matter, too, but not just any school with a cross on the wall. Families search for places where the Catholic identity of a school is more than a name. Where the curriculum is rich in truth, and where teachers see their role as a vocation, not just a job. And then there's safety, both physical and spiritual. A place where you can let your kids ride their bikes and not worry too much. But also a place where you don't have to fight every cultural current alone. In the end, the most Catholic-friendly cities are the ones where you feel you can build not just a house, but a domestic church. Where your faith isn't a weekend commitment, but a way of life. In an age where faith can feel increasingly isolated, it's often the quiet corners of the internet where something beautiful begins to grow. Reddit, known more for its debates and distractions, has quietly become a place where Catholic families gather, not just to ask questions, but to find direction. It's not flashy. There are no polished sermons or official endorsements. Just real people in real homes, trying to live out their faith while raising children in a world that doesn't always make that easy. The threads don't start with big declarations. They usually begin with something small. A parent moving across the country. A newlywed couple wondering where to settle down. A mother of 4 who just wants to know if there's a parish nearby where her kids won't be the only ones in the pew. And from there, a conversation unfolds, simple, sincere, and surprisingly rich. Hundreds of responses, not from experts, but from witnesses. From people who have walked the path and are now offering breadcrumbs to those just starting out. What makes these discussions powerful isn't just the advice, it's the honesty. People don't sugarcoat the challenges. They talk about the difficulty of finding solid catechesis. They mention the struggle to stay rooted when everything around you pushes in the opposite direction. But they also share the moments of grace. The first time they heard Gregorian chant during Mass and saw their toddler go quiet. The way a parish men's group helped save a marriage. The joy of watching their child receive the Eucharist for the first time in a place that truly felt like home. This is the power of the Catholic community on Reddit. It's not centralized, it's not organized, but it's deeply human. And in a world where so many feel disconnected, this unexpected digital parish has helped thousands of families not only find a city but find hope. A reminder that no matter how fragmented things may feel, the body of Christ is still alive, still reaching, still answering questions, one post at a time. St. Louis doesn't just have Catholic roots, it has a Catholic heartbeat. Known as the Rome of the West, this Midwestern city carries a legacy of devotion that isn't buried in history books, but still pulses through its streets, parishes, and schools today. For many families on Reddit, St. Louis kept coming up not because it's trendy or up and coming, but because it's stable. Faith here is not an accessory. It's the foundation. At the center of it all stands the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis, one of the most stunning churches in the United States. With its towering mosaics and sacred silence, it offers more than beauty, it offers refuge. But the strength of Catholic life in this city doesn't stop with one building. It lives in the neighborhoods, where parishes are still neighborhood anchors. It lives in the daily rhythm of Catholic schools, many of which have faithfully formed generations of children, not just academically, but spiritually. What truly sets St. Louis apart, though, is its investment in the next generation. Youth programs here are more than extracurricular, they're a culture. From thriving high school theology clubs to well-organized retreats and vocations events, there's a sense that the city hasn't forgotten the young church. Families speak of parishes where kids are altar servers, lectors, and music ministers. Where teen Bible studies don't feel awkward, but essential. Where the faith is not just being taught, it's being passed on with care. There are challenges, of course. No city is perfect. But in St. Louis, the scaffolding for Catholic life is already in place. And for many, that's enough to start building. It's a place where you can raise your children with a sense of reverence and rhythm. Where saints are not just studied, but slowly imitated. Where the church isn't just part of the city, it is part of the family. And in a world where that's increasingly rare, St. Louis quietly remains one of the few places where tradition still feels alive. For the McLaughlin family, moving to St. Louis wasn't just about a job opportunity, it was about a chance to begin again. They had tried to make it work in a larger coastal city, but something was always missing. The pace felt wrong. The parishes felt distant. Their kids, once curious about the faith, had started pulling away. When they arrived in St. Louis, they didn't expect miracles. But what they found was something quietly transformative, a parish that felt like home, and a school that treated their children as souls first, students second. They talk about that first Sunday at Mass. How a stranger in the pew turned around and offered to introduce them to the pastor. How the school principal remembered their names the next day. How their shy daughter suddenly asked if she could be an altar server after watching the other kids serve with confidence and care. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady, and that steadiness changed everything. Another parent, a mother of 6 named Rachel, shares how her children walk to daily Mass with their friends and classmates. How their school teaches not just theology, but virtue, patience, humility, joy. She says what keeps her grounded is knowing that if something were to happen to her, the parish would step in without question. It's not just a church, it's our village, she says. I don't carry the weight of their formation alone. These are the stories that don't make headlines, but they're the ones that shape lives. Stories of families who found in St. Louis a rhythm that matched the faith they were trying to live out. Where their children aren't pressured to hide their beliefs, but are encouraged to deepen them. Where support doesn't mean perfection, but presence. And that's what so many families long for, not a city that promises to do everything right, but a city that helps them do the most important thing well. Raise their children to love God and live with grace. In South Bend, Indiana, the presence of the University of Notre Dame is more than just academic, it's atmospheric. The university doesn't sit above the city like a distant monument. It seeps into the sidewalks, into the neighborhoods, into the language of faith that quietly shapes daily life here. For families looking to raise their children in a place where Catholicism isn't just preserved but lived, South Bend offers something rare. An environment where the sacred isn't sidelined, it's part of the air. There's a reverence to the way Notre Dame shapes the rhythm of the city. Bells from the basilica ring through the afternoon light. Processions and liturgies spill out onto campus lawns. Theology professors host talks that are open to the public. And it's not uncommon to see students praying the rosary while walking to class or gathering for adoration late at night. That culture doesn't stay inside the gates, it reaches into the town itself, pulling in local parishes, Catholic schools, and families who want to live in the shadow of something holy. Parents on Reddit speak about the sense of confidence that comes from raising their children in a place where they don't feel like the only ones trying. Catholic bookstores, Marian shrines, campus ministries, these aren't just for students. They're for everyone. And while South Bend is small, it carries a weight of tradition and faith that gives it an outsized spiritual impact. But what may be most meaningful is the sense of continuity. Children grow up attending campus masses, watching the students and seminarians, and dreaming not just of degrees, but of devotion. They see that faith doesn't have to be left behind when they grow up. In South Bend, Catholicism isn't treated like an extracurricular. It's treated like a calling. And for families searching for a place where the church isn't fading, but flourishing quietly under golden domes and winter skies, South Bend offers more than good schools or safe streets. It offers formation. It offers witness. And sometimes that's all a family really needs. Life in South Bend doesn't rush. It moves with a kind of rhythm that feels intentional, slow enough for families to breathe, structured enough for faith to take root. It's the kind of place where kids still ride bikes after school, and where neighbors pause on front porches to catch up after Mass. For Catholic families, this pace is more than just a perk, it's a kind of grace. It creates space for the faith to unfold naturally in the course of everyday life. Parishes here are small enough that you're remembered, but big enough to offer real opportunities for growth. Families talk about knowing their priests not just as celebrants, but as friends. Children are welcomed into the liturgy, not shushed at its edges. Potlucks, men's groups, youth choirs, there's a simplicity to it all that feels refreshingly real. One father shared how, after a job layoff, his parish quietly covered their grocery bills until he found new work. No one made a big deal of it, he said. It was just the church being the church. Beyond the parish walls, there's Notre Dame, the heartbeat of Catholic life in the city. Families often attend Mass on campus, walk the grotto at night, or bring visiting relatives to the basilica. On Saturdays in the fall, the sound of marching bands echoes through the streets, but even that somehow carries a sense of joy, of shared memory. Spiritual retreats, theology lectures, and Marian devotions spill over into the town, offering parents and teens alike a deeper well to draw from. And underneath all of this is something practical: affordability. Unlike larger cities, South Bend allows families to own a home, send their children to solid Catholic schools, and still live with a margin of peace. There's no need to choose between stability and spirituality here. For many, South Bend has become not just a place to live, but a place to flourish, a quiet intersection of prayer and play, faith and family, built not on noise or numbers, but on presence. And in that presence, many have found home. Tucked along the Ohio River, Steubenville doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't have skyscrapers or a bustling skyline. But what it does have quietly and powerfully is a deep well of Catholic life that continues to shape the city far beyond its modest size. At the heart of it all stands Franciscan University, a school whose influence goes far beyond academia. For decades now, it has quietly transformed Steubenville into a spiritual haven, orthodox, vibrant, and deeply rooted. This isn't just a college town with a chapel on campus. It's a city where Eucharistic processions weave through neighborhood streets, where theology students volunteer in local parishes, and where Sunday Mass is filled with both families and Franciscan friars. There's a sense that something sacred is always just around the corner, whether it's a Marian consecration group, a charismatic praise night, or a seminar on John Paul II's theology of the body. The faith here isn't ornamental. It's alive. It breathes through the community, quietly forming the lives of those who come and often, those who stay. Reddit users who mention Steubenville often describe it as unpolished but holy. It's not perfect. The city has struggled economically, and not every corner glows with polish. But for many Catholic families, that rawness is part of its beauty. It feels real. It feels humble. And in a world where Catholic culture can sometimes feel diluted or performative, Steubenville offers something different, a place where orthodoxy is not just taught, but lived with sincerity and joy. Franciscan University doesn't just influence the minds of its students, it shapes the soul of the entire city. And for families who long to raise their children where the truth of the faith is spoken clearly, joyfully, and without apology, Steubenville is more than a hidden gem. It's a signpost. A reminder that even in the most unexpected places, the church can still be bold, still be beautiful, and still be home. For young Catholic families, Steubenville isn't just a place to settle, it's a place to grow. There's something in the air here, something quietly contagious. It's not ambition or achievement that defines the town, but formation. A kind of holy seriousness that's softened by joy. In Steubenville, raising children in the faith isn't an uphill battle, it's the natural current of daily life. You're not the exception for wanting to pray before meals or go to daily mass. You're part of a community where that's simply what people do. Parents talk about how the faith feels integrated here, not compartmentalized. The family that runs the local cafe prays before opening. The babysitter is a theology major who just got back from a mission trip. The parish bulletin is filled with opportunities not just for adults, but for teens, kids, and even toddlers. Catechesis isn't watered down. Homilies don't shy away from truth. And because Franciscan University draws faithful students, graduates, and faculty from all over the country, the town benefits from a steady stream of people who take Catholic life seriously and bring their families along for the journey. One mother shared how her son, just 10 years old, started asking to go to adoration on his own after seeing college students talk about it at a parish night. Another father said he feels confident his children are learning not just about the faith, but how to live it through service, through community, through example. There's a sense that parents here are not alone in their desire to raise saints. The entire town seems to echo the same hope. Of course, Steubenville isn't for everyone. It's small. It's simple. But for many young families, that simplicity is exactly what they're looking for. A place where faith isn't just possible, it's prioritized. Where their children are surrounded not by confusion, but by clarity. And in a world of noise, Steubenville offers something rare. A place where the voice of God can still be heard, and where children are taught how to listen. Ave Maria, Florida doesn't just have Catholic roots, it was built with Catholicism at its very center. Literally. The town rises out of the sun-soaked landscape of southwest Florida, designed from the ground up around the towering presence of the Ave Maria oratory. Unlike other cities where faith is woven in over time, here it was the blueprint. From the streets to the schoolyards, the architecture to the atmosphere, everything about Ave Maria reflects a single, bold intention: to make Catholic life not just visible, but foundational. Founded in the early 2000s alongside Ave Maria University, the town was envisioned as a place where families could live in harmony with their beliefs, where daily mass, faithful education, and strong community wouldn't be luxuries, but norms. And over time, it became exactly that. Residents describe it as both peaceful and purposeful. There's a quiet reverence to life here, whether it's the sound of church bells echoing down the palm-lined roads or the sight of neighbors praying the rosary together in the town square at dusk. At the heart of it all is the oratory, a majestic church that's not just a landmark, it's a living part of the town's rhythm. From baptisms and weddings to candlelit vigils and solemn feast days, the spiritual calendar shapes daily life in Ave Maria. And because the university is embedded in the town itself, a culture of faith and learning flows freely from classrooms into homes, parks, and even local businesses. For families who want to raise their children in a place where Catholic values aren't an afterthought, but the very soil beneath their feet, Ave Maria offers a rare kind of sanctuary. It's not utopia, but it is intentional. And that intention woven into the design, the culture, the very name makes all the difference. In a world of compromise, this town stands as a quiet testament to what can happen when a community chooses to build not just for comfort or convenience, but for Christ. Living in Ave Maria feels less like moving to a town and more like stepping into a rhythm, a cadence of faith that quietly shapes every part of daily life. Here, the line between the sacred and the ordinary begins to blur, not because things are perfect, but because they're intentionally rooted in something higher. It's the kind of place where families walk to daily mass as naturally as others walk to the corner store, where you're just as likely to see kids riding bikes to the adoration chapel as to the basketball court. One resident described it as a neighborhood built like a parish, and that captures it well. The community isn't held together by convenience, it's bound by belief. There are rosary circles in front yards, spontaneous hymn singing during town events, and local businesses that close for holy days. Teenagers gather for theology nights, young moms host faith studies in their kitchens, and Sunday isn't just church day, it's the center of the week. Not every family is exactly the same, but there's a shared understanding. Faith isn't just something we talk about. It's something we live. Parents say the peace that comes with raising children here isn't just about safety, it's about clarity. Kids grow up seeing the faith modeled not just at home, but all around them. Their friends go to the same youth group. Their teachers open class with prayer. Even their coaches talk about virtue, not just victory. And when challenges come, as they do everywhere, there's a deep sense that you're not carrying them alone. Of course, life in Ave Maria still has dishes to wash, bills to pay, and moments of exhaustion. But those moments happen in a place where the larger story is always visible. A crucifix in every room. A tabernacle in the center of town. A shared life of grace that doesn't demand perfection, only presence. And in that presence, many families find what they've been searching for: not escape, but anchor. Not ease, but purpose. Not just neighbors, but companions on the journey toward heaven. At first glance, Phoenix might not seem like the obvious choice for Catholic families. The desert landscape, the sprawling neighborhoods, the sheer size of the city, it doesn't immediately whisper tradition. But beneath the surface, something remarkable is unfolding. Phoenix has quietly become a city of revival. Not with fanfare or spectacle, but with a strong, steady commitment to truth. And for many families, that's exactly what makes it so compelling. Much of this renewal traces back to diocesan leadership that isn't afraid to teach clearly and pastor with conviction. In Phoenix, orthodoxy isn't a fringe, it's the foundation. The diocese has embraced both beauty and boldness, offering a home to those drawn to reverent liturgy, vibrant catechesis, and a culture that encourages families to go deeper, not just wider. And that depth is felt in the parishes, where Sunday Mass is just the beginning. Youth ministries are flourishing. Confession lines are long. Eucharistic adoration isn't rare, it's expected. What surprises many families is just how alive the young church feels here. Teen retreats fill up weeks in advance. Vocations are openly encouraged. Families find themselves surrounded by peers who are not just surviving, but actively pursuing holiness. One parent said, "We moved here for the weather. We stayed because our kids found faith again." For those drawn to tradition, Phoenix offers something rare in the West. Consistent access to the Latin Mass, supported by a growing number of families who seek reverence, silence, and beauty in worship. But even outside those communities, there is a hunger for the sacred, a desire to recover the richness of the Church's liturgical life and pass it on to the next generation. Phoenix isn't perfect. No place is. But in this desert, something sacred is blooming. A revival rooted not in nostalgia, but in renewal. And in a world where many cities are drifting further from faith, Phoenix is quietly moving in the opposite direction toward the heart of the Church, one family at a time. In Phoenix, Catholic education isn't just an option, it's becoming a movement. What began as a few faithful schools scattered across the city has grown into a vibrant ecosystem of formation, one that stretches from bustling classrooms to living rooms transformed into domestic monasteries. Whether it's traditional Catholic schools or flourishing homeschool co-ops, families here are not just looking for academic excellence. They're looking for something deeper: formation in truth, beauty, and virtue. And Phoenix is answering that call. Parents speak about walking into schools where teachers begin each day with prayer, where saints line the walls, and where Mass is woven into the weekly rhythm, not as a formality, but as the heart of it all. Many of these schools are deeply aligned with the diocese's commitment to orthodoxy and clarity, offering not just a solid curriculum, but a worldview shaped by the Church. Families share how their children aren't just memorizing catechism answers, they're learning how to live them. To ask questions, to wonder, to worship. At the same time, Phoenix has become a haven for Catholic homeschoolers. Co-ops have taken root across the valley, offering support, structure, and spiritual community to families seeking to educate at home. These aren't isolated efforts, they're networks of families gathering for morning Mass, literature discussions, Latin classes, and park days that turn into rosary circles. There's a shared conviction among them that Catholic education doesn't have to be outsourced, it can be lived out, together. One mother shared how moving to Phoenix gave her children the chance to be surrounded by peers who take their faith seriously, whether in school uniforms or barefoot in the backyard. We didn't just find a place to teach them. We found a village to grow with. In a time when parents across the country are grappling with how to pass on their values amid cultural confusion, Phoenix offers something rare: clarity. Not through control or rigidity, but through conviction. Through schools and communities that are building not just students, but saints. And for families searching for that kind of hope, the desert is looking more like a promised land. Denver doesn't just sit in the shadow of the Rockies, it stands as one of the most talked about places for Catholic families looking to build something lasting. Over and over again, Reddit threads return to this city with the same quiet confidence. You should look into Denver. And once you do, it's not hard to see why. Beneath the mountain skyline is a church that feels alive, young, committed, and growing. It's not just about numbers, it's about depth. Families aren't just attending Mass. They're forming friendships, founding ministries, and filling pews with children who know they belong. The Archdiocese of Denver has spent years investing in formation. From strong Catholic schools to parish programs that don't just inform but transform, there's an intentionality to Catholic life here. And that intentionality is showing fruit. It's not uncommon to meet couples who moved here just to be closer to a thriving parish, or who chose a neighborhood based on proximity to a particular school or chapel. These aren't people seeking ease, they're seeking faithfulness. And Denver offers both challenge and support in ways that are drawing families from all over the country. What makes the city unique is its mix of energy and stability. There's a boldness to the Catholic culture here, often fueled by young families with small children, new converts, or graduates of local Catholic colleges who chose to stay. Parishes are full, but not crowded out. Priests are accessible. Community events, whether theology nights, youth groups, or retreats, don't feel like afterthoughts. They feel like home. There's also the draw of beauty. The mountains aren't just a backdrop. They remind you daily that creation is a cathedral of its own. And many families here speak of how the natural world around them has helped awaken something spiritual in their children and themselves. In Denver, faith doesn't have to be forced. It flows. And for families searching for a city where Catholic life doesn't just survive, but thrives, this mountain city continues to rise to the top, not just for its views, but for its vision. What places Denver at the top of so many Catholic families' lists isn't just the scenery or the schools, it's the culture. A culture that Archbishop Samuel Aquila has quietly and consistently shaped with clarity, courage, and compassion. His leadership has not only anchored the Archdiocese in truth, but has drawn families who are searching for more than comfort, they're looking for conviction. In a time when many dioceses struggle to speak plainly, Denver's voice has remained steady. And that steadiness has made all the difference. Under Archbishop Aquila, Denver has become known for its unapologetically pro-life and pro-family mission, not as political slogans, but as pastoral realities. Parishes regularly host support groups for new mothers, Pro-life ministries are active and visible, and families with many children are not seen as burdens, but as blessings. There's a sense that here, the church is still speaking into the joys and the struggles of family life with tenderness and truth. It doesn't just offer doctrine, it offers a path. Families also talk about the strength of the support systems. Whether it's homeschool co-ops, Catholic counseling centers, fatherhood groups, or young adult ministries that actually lead to marriages, there's a web of connection that makes it possible to live out the faith with others. That's no small thing in today's world. Parents describe the relief of being in parishes where they don't feel like the only ones trying to raise their children in the church, where faith isn't treated like a private hobby, but a shared mission. And beyond the institutions, there's a culture of joy. A visible sense that the church here is not retreating, but building. Not shrinking back, but pressing forward. The families who move to Denver aren't looking for an escape from the world, they're searching for a place where they can raise their children in the light of Christ, with others who are doing the same. And in Denver, many have found exactly that: a church that still dares to speak the truth, and a city where that truth is quietly transforming lives. Not every city made the top 6, but that doesn't mean they've gone unnoticed. In the Reddit threads where families swap stories and seek direction, certain names keep surfacing, not in bold headlines, but in quiet, consistent praise. Cities like Nashville, Minneapolis, and Arlington, Virginia may not always make the big lists, but they've become strongholds of faith for many families carving out a Catholic life. Nashville stands out not just for its music, but for its growing Catholic presence. Families speak of parishes filled with young families, reverent liturgies, and a bishop committed to orthodoxy. The city has a thriving homeschool network, and more than a few parents say they moved there after attending a retreat or pilgrimage and feeling something click. There's something about the Southern hospitality meeting Catholic conviction that gives Nashville a warmth families hold on to. In Minneapolis, it's the unexpected strength of the Catholic community that surprises many. Despite being in a state known for its progressive politics, the church there remains steady and vocal. Strong Catholic high schools, dynamic campus ministries, and deeply engaged parishes give parents the tools to raise children in truth without constantly being on the defensive. Reddit users often note the city's balanced urban resources with a strong backbone of faith. Arlington, Virginia, meanwhile, earns near universal respect for its liturgical reverence and its priests. The diocese has long been known for offering both the ordinary and extraordinary form of the Mass with care and beauty, and for raising up vocations in numbers that speak for themselves. Families here speak of a kind of spiritual confidence that radiates through the schools and parishes alike, even in the face of cultural headwinds coming from nearby DC. These cities may not be everyone's destination, but for the families who've found home there, they're more than just honorable mentions. They're answers to prayer. Reminders that wherever the church is lived with integrity and joy, even quietly, it becomes a light. And sometimes, those quiet lights shine brightest of all. When Catholic families begin to search for a place to plant roots, one of the first questions that often surfaces isn't just where, but what kind of place. A bustling city with endless resources and parish options, or a small town where faith is simpler, slower, and perhaps more visible. Reddit is full of reflections from both sides, each offering a glimpse into how Catholic life can flourish in very different soil. In the city, the advantages are clear. There are usually more parishes, more mass times, and more specialized ministries. Catholic schools may be better funded or more academically rigorous. Youth programs are often vibrant, and there's a sense of being part of a larger, more visible Catholic presence. If you're drawn to tradition, you may even find Latin Mass communities, theology on tap nights, and young adult groups that give your family the support it needs to grow. But with that access comes pace. Families often talk about the cost, not just financial, but spiritual, of navigating life in a city that moves fast and often pulls in many directions. It's easy to get lost in the noise. In small towns, the story is different. There may be only one parish, one priest, one school. But what it lacks in variety, it often makes up for in depth. Children grow up serving at the same altar, knowing their pastor by name, and seeing familiar faces every Sunday. Community feels more like family, and the faith can be lived with less distraction. Yet the simplicity also has its limits. Homeschooling may be the only real Catholic education option. Social circles can be narrow, and if a parish struggles spiritually, families might feel isolated without alternatives nearby. There's no perfect formula. Some families thrive in the rhythm of small-town life. Others need the breadth a city provides. But the thread that runs through both is the same. It's not about the size of the place, it's about the strength of the witness. Whether under skyscrapers or surrounded by fields, what matters most is that the faith is alive and being passed on with love. For Catholic families, education is never just about grades or college prep, it's about formation. It's about raising children who know not just what to think, but how to live. Across every city mentioned in this story, from Denver to Steubenville, a quiet thread connects them all. The central role of Catholic education, whether through schools built on fidelity or through homeschooling communities shaped by shared conviction. In each case, the goal is the same: truth, beauty, and the kind of learning that leads a soul to God. Catholic schools in these cities aren't just institutions. They're extensions of the domestic church. In places like St. Louis and Phoenix, families speak about walking their children to daily mass before the school bell rings. They talk about classrooms where the saints aren't just studied, they're imitated. Where the Eucharist isn't just referenced, it's received. Parents describe teachers who see their work not as a job, but as a mission. And in many cases, that mission changes lives. But not every family finds what they need in a traditional school setting. For them, the answer has been found in the rising strength of homeschool co-ops, groups of parents who come together to teach, support, and live the faith in community. In cities like South Bend and Arlington, these co-ops are thriving. They gather in parishes, basements, libraries, and parks. They teach Latin and literature, organize feast day celebrations, and end the day with the rosary. There's structure, but there's also freedom, the kind that lets faith permeate every subject, every hour, every conversation. Whether it's a classical academy or a backyard co-op, these educational paths are shaping the next generation, not just academically, but eternally. Parents aren't outsourcing the formation of their children. They're stepping into it, shoulder to shoulder, day by day. And in a world that often tries to pull families apart, Catholic education rooted in truth and lived in community has become one of the most powerful ways to hold them together. For many Catholic families, the search for a new home doesn't end with finding the right house or school, it truly begins with finding the right parish. Not just a place where Mass is offered, but a place where hearts are fed. Where the faith is not only proclaimed from the altar, but lived in the pews. Again and again, on Reddit and in quiet conversations, families share how one good parish didn't just influence their decision to stay in a city, it transformed everything. There's the story of a couple who moved to Phoenix for work, unsure if they would stay more than a year. They wandered into a parish on a quiet Sunday morning, expecting little. But the moment the choir began, something shifted. The homily spoke to a question they hadn't dared to ask aloud. And after Mass, an older couple invited them to coffee and kept inviting them back. That parish became their anchor. They stayed. They married there. And years later, baptized their first child at the same font. Another family in South Bend shared how their teenage son was drifting bored at Mass, disengaged from his faith. Then they discovered a parish with a vibrant youth group, a pastor who spoke directly to the hearts of young people, and a liturgy that didn't try to entertain, but lifted the soul. Slowly, their son began to change. Not overnight, but steadily. He started asking questions again. He started praying again. And it began with that one parish. The truth is, a good parish is more than a Sunday obligation. It becomes a spiritual home. It's where marriages are blessed, children are formed, wounds are healed, and grace is poured out in ordinary ways that carry eternal weight. Not every parish will feel like home at first glance, but when you find one that feeds your family, you know it. You feel it. And in a world where isolation runs deep, that kind of belonging matters more than most people ever realize. It doesn't just shape a weekend. It shapes a life. Not every family can move to the city of their dreams. Sometimes, the numbers simply don't work. A beautiful parish, a vibrant school, A strong Catholic culture, none of it matters if the rent is too high, the mortgage out of reach, or the daily cost of living leaves no room to breathe. This is where so many Catholic families find themselves caught between desire and reality, trying to balance what they long for spiritually with what they can actually afford. And yet, in that tension, something sacred can begin to take root. Reddit threads are full of families wrestling with this exact question. One couple wrote about falling in love with a city known for its liturgical richness, only to realize it was beyond their budget. So they chose a smaller, less celebrated town nearby, and drove an hour each Sunday to attend Mass where they felt truly fed. It's not easy, they wrote, but it's worth it. That 1 hour anchors our whole week. Other families speak of the sacrifices they've made to live near a faithful parish or to send their children to a truly Catholic school. Smaller homes, 1 car instead of 2, fewer vacations. Some have moved in with extended family to make it work. Some have taken on second jobs. But almost always, the message is the same. When the goal is eternity, the cost feels different. Sacrifice doesn't disappear, but it becomes meaningful. It becomes holy. Of course, there's also grace in choosing peace over pressure. Some families have found that the most Catholic choice wasn't to stretch thin for the sake of a reputation, but to stay where they are and build something good with what they have. To plant roots, form community, and live the faith boldly, even if it means doing so without the ideal setting. In the end, affordability isn't just a practical question. It's a spiritual one. Because how we live, what we give, and what we're willing to let go of says as much about our faith as where we live. And sometimes, sacrificial living leads to the richest kind of life, the kind money can't buy, but grace can build. When families dream about where to raise their children in the faith, they're not just picturing a beautiful church, they're picturing the walk to it. The streetlights on the way home. The neighbors who wave, the parks where their kids can play, the peace of knowing their community is watching out for them. Safety isn't just a practical concern, it's a foundation. And for many Catholic families on Reddit, that question of neighborhood safety is inseparable from the larger dream of raising a faithful, flourishing family. Parents share openly about choosing cities where their kids can ride bikes to a friend's house without fear. Where local law enforcement is present, but not overwhelming. Where the people around them care not just about property values, but about each other's well-being. It's not about perfection, it's about peace. And when families find that, it creates room for something deeper to grow. Community support is the second half of that picture. Reddit threads are filled with testimonies of small moments that meant everything. A parish family bringing meals after a new baby. A priest showing up unannounced with a rosary and a word of hope. A neighbor offering to pick up groceries when someone was sick. These aren't dramatic stories, but they are defining ones. They remind families that they are not alone, and that the church, at her best, is as close as the house next door. Then there's the Sunday experience itself, the moment everything comes together. Families on Reddit describe walking into parishes where the cry of a child isn't met with annoyance, but with understanding. Where the homily reaches both parents and teens. Where the music uplifts, the liturgy holds reverence, and the pews feel full of life. These moments matter more than people realize. They're what children remember. They're what carry tired parents through the week. And they're often what turn a church visit into a lifelong home. In the end, safety, support, and sacred rhythm go hand in hand. When all three are present, something beautiful happens, not just a good Sunday, but a good life. And more than anything, that's what families are searching for. When Catholic families talk about where to move, they rarely start with the name of a bishop. But over time, something becomes clear. Diocesan leadership matters. Quietly, sometimes without families even realizing it at first, the bishop sets the tone for everything. His vision becomes the culture. His fidelity shapes the seminaries, the schools, the parishes, even the kind of priests who are ordained. And when a bishop leads with courage, clarity, and love, the ripple effects can transform an entire region. On Reddit, families often reflect on what it's like to live under a bishop who teaches truth without compromise, yet with a father's heart. They share stories of dioceses where vocations are thriving, where liturgies are celebrated with reverence, and where families feel supported, not sidelined. In these places, Catholic schools flourish because they're built on a clear moral foundation. Homeschool co-ops find support instead of suspicion. Parishes don't just survive, they grow. In cities like Denver and Phoenix, parents have noticed how much difference it makes when their bishop publicly defends church teaching while also tending to the hearts of his flock. When a shepherd stays close to the sheep, the people feel it. And children growing up in that kind of environment begin to see the church not just as an institution, but as something deeply personal, something that walks with them. Of course, no bishop is perfect. But when leadership is rooted in prayer and oriented toward heaven, it gives families confidence. They know they're not alone in the work of raising saints. They know their efforts are being echoed from the pulpit and reinforced in the confessional. And that kind of alignment between home and church life is rare but powerful. In the end, diocesan leadership isn't just administrative. It's pastoral. It's spiritual. And for many Catholic families trying to live the faith in a world that often opposes it, a good bishop isn't just a gift. He's a lifeline. A reminder that the church is still guiding, still guarding, and still gathering her children under the mantle of truth. In an age when so much of life plays out behind screens, it's easy to dismiss the digital world as a distraction from the sacred. But for many Catholic families, online spaces have become lifelines. Not replacements for the sacraments, but bridges to them. From Reddit forums and Catholic podcasts to live-streamed masses and parish Facebook groups, digital evangelization is quietly guiding real-world decisions and helping families stay grounded in a culture that often pulls them away from their faith. Parents share how a single YouTube homily brought them back to confession. How a Reddit thread helped them find a Latin Mass parish when they moved across the country. How they discovered Catholic homeschooling resources, found support for special needs children, or stumbled upon saints they had never heard of, saints who soon became household names. These moments don't happen in isolation. They happen in the quiet corners of the internet where faith is still being shared, story by story, post by post. Reddit, in particular, has become a surprising hub for Catholic connection. Its anonymity removes pressure. Its honesty builds trust. And in that space, families have opened up about everything: marriage struggles, schooling choices, parish experiences, moral dilemmas, and found others willing to walk with them. Sometimes that support leads to laughter. Sometimes it leads to tears. But always, it reminds them that they are not alone. Digital evangelization can't replace parish life, but it can lead people to it. It can offer the encouragement needed to try a new parish, talk to a priest, or return to the sacraments. It can nudge a father into taking his role more seriously, or inspire a teenager to start praying again. It can give families courage to live the faith publicly, to move boldly, to raise their children with conviction, even when it feels countercultural. In the noise of the internet, there is still a whisper of grace. And for many Catholic families, that whisper has become a compass pointing them not toward screens, but toward sanctity, toward home, toward Christ. It's not an easy question, and it doesn't come with a universal answer. But for many Catholic families, the idea of moving for the sake of their faith, especially their children's formation, has quietly moved from possibility to prayer. It starts with a tug in the heart. A moment at Mass where you realize your children aren't engaged. A school meeting that makes you wonder if values are being blurred. A restless feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's something more somewhere else. On Reddit, parents talk openly about wrestling with this decision. They speak of late-night conversations, long spreadsheets, and hours spent watching parish live streams in cities they've never been to. It's not a romantic notion. It's often practical and painful. Moving means leaving behind family, jobs, familiarity. It means risk. But they also speak of something deeper, something that feels like trust. Because at the end of the day, it's not about chasing perfection. It's about planting your children where they can grow toward heaven. Some families do move, and they don't do it because they've found utopia. They do it because they've found a community that shares their convictions. A school that teaches with clarity. A parish that welcomes them like family. And for those who can't move, there's hope too. The answer isn't always relocation. Sometimes it's transformation becoming the very witness you long to find in others, starting a rosary group, leading a co-op, asking the hard questions at your local parish, staying rooted in a difficult place and being the seed of renewal there. But if you're discerning a move for the sake of your children's formation, don't ignore that desire. Take it seriously. Bring it to prayer. Talk to those who've gone before you. The church has always been on the move not to escape hardship, but to seek holiness. And if God is asking you to uproot, it's not to lose something, but to find something greater. Not ease, but grace. Not safety, but sanctity. And maybe, just maybe, the journey you're considering is exactly the one He's been preparing you for all along. At the end of every thread, every house tour, every parish visit, what Catholic families are really searching for is the same. A place where their children can grow up knowing they are loved by their parents, by their church, and by God. A place where Sunday isn't the exception but the anchor. Where the sacraments are not rare but rhythm. And in that search, it's easy to become consumed by logistics and locations. But sometimes we need to be reminded of something deeper. Home is not just found on a map. Home is where the church is. That truth has echoed in every city shared here, from the plains of Steubenville to the heart of Denver, from quiet towns to bustling suburbs. Each place offers its own rhythm, its own struggles, its own graces. But none of them are magic. What makes them holy is not geography, but the presence of people striving after Christ together. Families who show up when it's inconvenient. Priests who stay faithful when it's hard. Communities that lean in instead of walking away. That's what transforms a building into a parish, a town into a home. And even if you're not in one of these cities, even if your situation doesn't allow for a move, that doesn't mean you're without hope. Because the church is not limited to certain zip codes. She is where the Eucharist is. Where forgiveness is offered. Where truth is spoken and Christ is known. That means she is with you right now. And from wherever you are, you can begin again. So keep praying. Keep searching. Keep building. Whether you find yourself in the desert or the mountains, in a booming city or a small town with one parish, know this. God is already there. And if you follow Him, your family will not be alone. You will have what you need. Because in the end, the greatest gift you can give your children isn't a perfect city, it's a lived faith. And wherever that faith is practiced with love, with sacrifice, and with joy, you will find what every Catholic family longs for most. You will find home.